This is part 2 of how to build a stone throne for your action figures. Hello and welcome back to Jacob's Toys. Please do like, share, subscribe and all of those things. All support to the channel is very much appreciated. As I said, this is part 2. If you've not seen part 1 already, then go and check out my page on how to build this, the build and sculpt part of this tutorial. I've already painted it, I've given it a quick coat with spray paint. Now this is the fun bit now. So give it a quick coat with a black spray paint as an undercoat, or you can paint it by hand. Now I use these tester pots. These are, I think they're from Wilkinson actually, which is like a department store over here in the UK, and they're about £1 each, £1.10, something like that. You can get a whole variety of colours. So I picked up a handful of different ones. I picked up some greys, I picked up some reds, I picked up some whites, but for a stone effect you're going to want a grey that's a bit lighter than the black that you've already painted the base with, and a white, and I'll tell you why you need those two in a bit. You can see some of the pink coming through, some of the foam board coming through on the black still, but that's just under this light, and don't worry too much, it won't affect the overall finish of the piece. As I said at the beginning, if you've not seen part 1 already, then go and check out my page and you'll see part 1 on how to put this together, how we actually constructed it in real time as well, so you can follow along if you wish to do so. I'll also put a link to the video in the description of this video. So anyway, so I really enjoy kind of diorama building of stone because you don't have to be precise, you can be quite messy, you can be quite free with it. What you want to do is you want to get quite a large brush, and you want to get the grey paint, and we're going to use a technique called dry brushing. Now dry brushing essentially means you put the brush in the paint and then you brush it onto a bit of paper or a bit of card or something to brush off the excess paint. So then you're essentially just brushing what's left on the brush onto the actual thing itself. So yeah, that's why it looks like I'm kind of painting the side here. I'm just kind of brushing off the excess, and you just really want to be messy with it. Just splodge it on. Because you're dry brushing it, it's not going to completely coat it. You're going to see a lot of the black through the back. You can kind of see it a little bit better there on the back piece, but you just want to go to town on it. Just cover everything with the grey dry brush. Now it will dry a little bit darker than it looks when you're initially putting it on. Let me just turn it around so you can see it a bit better. You get a nice dose of paint on the brush there. I'm just going to dry brush it on, making sure that I cover all of the actual throne itself. Now what you're going to notice as you're doing this is where it's painted black as an undercoat and you're dry brushing on the grey, the black will stay in the cracks and the cut out parts of the throne, and the grey will kind of just cover the main part of it. The overall kind of colour of it will go to like a stony kind of grey black colour, because the black undercoat and the grey dry brush will kind of not mix in, but it will look quite fluid. It won't look like two solidly different colours, if that makes sense. And just want to make sure they get into all of the cracks. Now I spray painted this. Now the difference between spray paint and pot paint is that spray paint can affect the look of the foam, so you need to be careful. It depends what spray paint you use. I found that barbecue paint, bizarrely enough, so you can get spray paint for painting barbecues and wood burners and stuff, doesn't melt the plastic, whereas other spray paint can. Now I'm not that fussed about stone, because if you spray it with spray paint, as long as you don't coat it on really thick, the little bits of kind of meltedness and bubbleness kind of add to the overall texture of the throne. So the stone, and in this case the stone throne. So it isn't actually too bad of an effect, and it actually does you a little bit of a favour. As you can see here, as I'm starting to sort of dry brush it on, the grey's going on quite nicely, and you can see there the little cracks that I cut out are staying black. It gives it a really nice effect. So yeah, just put a nice healthy amount on. Through trial and error, what I have found out is that it does dry a lot darker, so depending on the consistency of the paint that you're using on top and on bottom, it does go on a lot lighter, and then once it dries it's darker. Now these paints are the tester pots, like I said, from a department store. Now these are essentially wall paint, so you know, all the cleaning methods are the same. They're water based, so you can dry brushes off with water, but I just found that they're a nice cheap alternative to using actual kind of model paints and stuff like that, because you really want to kind of just put as much on as possible, and you want to be messy with it. Let's have a look on this side bit. So see, there we go, how it highlights the the cracks. Now don't worry if any of the grey does go into the cracks, because it's stone, it's kind of natural. It doesn't really matter how it looks. The messier the better, I find, with stonework. And these pots are a decent size as well. Now if you were painting your living room or your lounge or something, this pot doesn't go very far. You get kind of a little patch in your room to see whether you like the colour or not. But as a model building paint, they really do go quite far. The amount that we're using on this particular piece, for example, is minimal. You'd be able to do 15-20 of pieces kind of this size with this technique with one of those pots easily. And the great thing is, if you find a department store that's got a good variety, you can get loads of different shades of particular colours. So when it comes to greys and whites, you can get about 3 or 4 different kind of greys and whites. Now this particular grey is quite light in comparison to some of the ones I've used before. It's a lot lighter than some of the others, but it's kind of working out quite well. Now I'm just going to speed this bit up, because essentially I'm just doing the same thing over and over again, so you don't need to watch the whole thing. But as I said, just be really messy. There's no kind of technique to it. Just make sure that you get into all the cracks, and make sure you do a full coverage. I am doing the back. Now even though the back isn't going to be seen in photographs and on displays and stuff, I like to kind of go over it and do the whole thing. So I'll just slow the video down again so you can just see the dry brush technique on the back. So I just find that it's best to just cover the whole thing, because you never know what parts are going to show up. So no, I'm not going to film it from this stage, from this side, but even so, I didn't build the back with it being visible in mind. But even now, with a little bit of paint on it, it doesn't actually look that bad. Actually looks alright. Doesn't look as good as the front, but it's not actually too bad. So there we go. So there's the whole thing kind of coated in grey. And you can always go back and do this stage again, but once the paint is dry, the more you put on, the thicker the application will be. So if you do this stage again after the paint's dry, you're gonna kind of cover that black up more and more. So I kind of just recommend just doing this one coat and leaving it like that, because we're then going to move on to a different colour. Now this could be left as it is. That would be okay, that would be adequate. But this is a stage that I didn't do originally, but since doing it I can't do stone without doing it, and that's actually adding a white highlight. Now it might feel a little bit odd putting white on it, but what you want to do is you kind of want to do the edges. So I'm doing a bit off screen annoyingly, but just along the edges like this, and it just really brings up those edges. You can see there on the back, and it really does give it a really good finish. When I first started adding the white, I was really what's the word for it? I didn't put as much on as I do now. I was a little bit nervous about putting white on the top of it, but once it's dried, it gives it a really cool finish. It just kind of brings out the edges really nicely. So the best place to see it on camera is probably that back piece that I did, where you can just see that kind of white line down the edge. Really just brings out the cuts and the kind of chips and stuff. But as you can see, this is quite a good angle for the all the cuts and the scratches that I did. They really do stand out. And as I said in the last video, all of that grout that we put on it has kind of disappeared. Like, you can't really tell where the grout is. I mean, you can see a little bit on the front, but yeah, nothing that you're going to kind of complain about. If you are worried about the grout, then back in that grouting stage, you can actually get something like sandpaper or something that's got a bit of texture to it, and kind of press that into the grout, and it will give it a little bit more texture. And then when you're highlighting it, especially this with a white, it will pick up all of those bits of sand. So that's another technique. But yeah, just put that white on, put it on every kind of edge, every angle, and it will really just kind of bring it up. You can also do a little bit over the kind of flat surfaces, and it will just again further highlight all of those cuts and creases and stuff that you made. So there we go. I'm just going to speed the video up again because there is a lot of white to get through. So there we go. I'm just slopping it on. As I said, there's no real right or wrong way of putting these paints on. I think you just got to do what you like aesthetically, how it looks. I like putting a lot of white highlights on it. I find that it works really well in the photographs and stuff. But yeah, there we go. Look at that. Looks like a throne made of stone, just as we wanted. So let's just finish this bit of white off, and then I will get some shots. There we go. So there is the finished article. I'm really pleased with how it turned out. You can see all those kind of cracks and splits and stuff that we worked on. The steps look natural enough. It kind of looks like the ground. you can kind of get the idea that somebody built something and it's kind of faded away. And there we go, the figure really pops when you put it on it. I always find that it's better to use a figure with colours in it, because against the black, whites and greys it really kind of pops out. But old Sleepwalker there again, just kind of modelling the throne for me. So yeah, do go and check out my page, have a look at part 1 of how we built it. I hope that you found this video useful. Do let me know in the comments if you have, or if you've got any questions. But let's flip over to one of the photographs I did. So I got a Baron Zemo recently from the Super Villains boxes, and I thought he would look good on the throne. So here he is in a photograph with the stone throne, and I think it looks alright. I'm quite pleased with it. Got a couple of extra rocks there around the edges just to add effect. But yeah, thanks very much for watching. Please do like, share, subscribe and all of those things. Hope you found these videos useful. As I said, any questions, pop them in the comments, and I'll see you soon.